that toast pleat say. The history of this incredible journey has been hidden from us for decades.
What if a forgotten diary held the key to an impossible escape, detailing a story so incredible it defies belief? This isn't fiction. It's the true account of a pilot's survival against all odds, meticulously revealed through the pages of a lost journal. Prepare to be captivated by a journey of human resilience that will leave you breathless. Welcome to Motivation Unknown People. Before we begin this extraordinary story of hidden history and impossible survival, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from today? And if you believe some of the most incredible stories are the ones that were never told, hit that subscribe button and help us uncover these amazing tales. Dr. Rebecca Chen had always been drawn to forgotten stories. As the chief archivist at the Burlington Historical Society, she spent her days cataloging donations from local families, old photographs, letters, documents that most people considered worthless but that sometimes contained glimpses of lives lived in extraordinary times. The Morrison house donation was supposed to be routine. The elderly woman who'd inherited the property from her late uncle had called the museum, saying she'd found some old war stuff in the attic and didn't know what to do with it. Rebecca had driven out on a gray October afternoon, expecting to find the usual collection of medals, discharge papers, and maybe a few letters home. What she found instead was a house that time had forgotten. The attic was cramped and dusty, filled with decades of accumulation. Boxes of Christmas decorations sat next to forgotten furniture, and everything smelled of mothballs and old wood. Rebecca worked methodically, photographing items before carefully packing them for transport to the museum. In the far corner, wedged between two support beams and covered by a moth-eaten army blanket, she found a leather satchel. The material was cracked with age but still intact, and when she opened it, Rebecca discovered it contained items that made her pulse quicken: maps of Europe, hand-drawn and annotated, a compass with a cracked face, a small metal identification tag that read, Morrison, Charles WLT, USAAF, and wrapped in oilcloth, preserved as if someone had known it would need to survive decades, was a leather-bound journal. Rebecca opened the diary carefully, aware that she was likely the first person to read these words since they'd been written. The first entry was dated March 3, 1943, and began simply, "If anyone finds this, my name is Lieutenant Charles Morrison, and I'm writing this from inside Stalag Luft III. What I'm about to attempt has never been done before, and probably never will be again, but I have to try." Back at the museum, Rebecca began the painstaking process of transcribing Charlie Morrison's diary. What she read challenged everything she thought she knew about World War II. Prisoner of war camps. According to military records, no Allied airmen had ever successfully escaped from Stalag Luft III in March 1943. The famous Great Escape wouldn't happen until March 1944, and even that had ended in tragedy, with most of the escapees recaptured and executed. But Charlie Morrison's diary told a different story. March 5, 1943. The tunnel is progressing faster than expected. Hans thinks we can breach the perimeter fence by the 15th. The guards suspect nothing. March 8, 1943. Received word from the resistance contact in Berlin. The safe house is confirmed. Marie will be waiting with civilian clothes and papers. March 12, 1943. Final preparations complete. Johnson backed out at the last minute, said it was suicide. Maybe he's right, but I've been here 8 months, and I'm not spending another winter in this place. Rebecca cross-referenced the diary entries with official military archives. There was no record of a Charles Morrison being held at Stalag Luft III. No documentation of any escape attempt in March 1943. According to the military files she could access, Lieutenant Charles Morrison had been killed in action when his B-17 was shot down over Germany on February 18, 1943. But here was his diary, written weeks after his supposed death, describing an escape plan so detailed and methodical that it had to be real. March 15th, 1943. This is it. Hans and I go tonight. The tunnel mouth is 30 yards past the perimeter fence. If we can make it to the forest, we have a chance. If not, ... Well, at least I tried to get home to Sarah. The entry ended there, cut off mid-sentence, as if Charlie had been interrupted while writing. Rebecca knew she needed help. She contacted Dr. Marcus Webb, a military historian at the University of Vermont who specialized in World War II aviation records. When she showed him photocopies of the diary, his initial reaction was skepticism. "I've spent 20 years researching POW camps," Dr. Webb told her during their meeting. Stalag Luft III was one of the most secure facilities the Germans operated. The idea that 2 prisoners escaped successfully in 1943, a full year before the Great Escape, and left no trace in the historical record. It's highly unlikely. But what if it was deliberately covered up? Rebecca asked. What if there was a reason this escape was never documented? Dr. Webb examined the diary more carefully, studying the handwriting, the paper, even the ink. The materials are period correct, he admitted, and the level of detail about camp conditions, guard routines, tunnel construction, it's too accurate to be fiction. Together, they began a deeper investigation. Rebecca used her museum connections to access private archives and family collections, while Dr. Webb reached out to military historians in Europe. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. While researching resistance networks in occupied Europe, Rebecca found a reference in a declassified OSS report to a package Morrison, military slang for an Allied airman being moved through escape lines. The report, dated April 1943, mentioned an American pilot who had been brought to a safe house in Paris after an extraordinary breach of enemy security. The pilot had eventually made it to England, but his identity and the details of his escape had been classified. Package Morrison could only be Charlie. Armed with new information. Rebecca and Dr. Webb expanded their search to British and French archives. What they discovered was a carefully buried story that military officials had kept secret for 8 decades. Charlie Morrison had indeed escaped from Stalag Luft III, but his breakout had been part of a larger intelligence operation. The tunnel he'd mentioned in his diary hadn't been dug by prisoners. It had been created by German resistance members working with British intelligence. The escape had been a test run for the larger operation that would eventually become the Great Escape. Charlie and his fellow prisoner, a German anti-Nazi activist named Hans Müller, had been chosen because they were both due to be transferred to different camps, making their disappearance less likely to trigger immediate security reviews. But the operation had nearly been discovered. In his haste to get away, Charlie had left behind his diary, hidden in a place he'd never thought to mention to his debrief. The military had decided the security risk was too great to document the escape officially, so they'd simply listed Morrison as killed in action and moved on. Rebecca found Charlie's actual military record in a restricted British archive. After his escape, he'd been debriefed by intelligence officers and then quietly reassigned to a training role in England. He'd survived the war, returned to Vermont, and lived a normal life until his death in 1987, but he'd never spoken publicly about his escape, honoring the secrecy agreement he'd signed with military intelligence. Rebecca's discovery made international headlines when she published her findings in the Journal of Military History. The story of Charlie Morrison's impossible escape challenged accepted narratives about World War II and revealed how much history had been deliberately hidden. The diary became the centerpiece of a new exhibit at the Burlington Historical Society called Hidden Heroes: The Untold Stories of Vermont Veterans. For the first time, visitors could read Charlie's own words describing his desperate bid for freedom and his dangerous journey through occupied Europe. But the most meaningful moment came when Charlie's niece, the same woman who had donated the attic contents, attended the exhibit opening. Uncle Charlie never talked about the war, she told Rebecca. We always wondered why he seemed different from other veterans, more secretive, more private. Now, I understand. Rebecca had arranged for a special display case containing not just the diary, but also the maps, compass, and identification tag she'd found in the attic. Each item told part of a story that had been lost for nearly 80 years. What strikes me most, Rebecca said during her speech at the exhibit opening, is that Charlie Morrison kept this diary as a record of his courage. Not knowing that it would stay hidden for 8 decades, he wrote it for himself, to document what he was attempting, never imagining that future generations would read it. The exhibit drew visitors from around the world, military historians, genealogy researchers, and people simply fascinated by stories of human resilience. Many brought their own family artifacts, hoping to uncover similar hidden histories. Dr. Webb used the diary as the foundation for a book about unknown World War II escapes, leading to the discovery of several other deliberately obscured stories. The intelligence networks that had helped Charlie were finally given the recognition they deserved. 6 months after the exhibit opened, Rebecca received a letter from a man in Berlin. He identified himself as the grandson of Hans Mueller, Charlie's escape partner, and said his family had kept documents related to the same operation. The two sides of the story, separated for 80 years, were finally reunited. Charlie Morrison's diary had done more than reveal one man's extraordinary escape. It had opened a window into the hidden history of World War II, reminding everyone that the most incredible stories are often the ones that were never supposed to be told. The leather-bound journal now sits in a climate-controlled case, its pages preserved for future researchers, and somewhere in other attics, other forgotten stories wait to be discovered by historians who understand that the past is never really past. It's just waiting for the right person to ask the right questions. Welcome to Motivation Unknown People. These are the moments when forgotten becomes remembered, when hidden stories finally find their voice, and when we discover that history's most incredible tales are often the ones that were buried deepest. Have you ever found something unexpected in an old family collection? Share your discovery in the comments below, and let us know where in the world you're watching from. If stories like this remind you that extraordinary courage often goes unrecognized, subscribe to Motivation Unknown People for more incredible tales of hidden heroes and buried history. Until next time, remember, the most important stories are often the ones that were never meant to be found, but sometimes they find us anyway.
That toast pleat Flumdogmedi say. The history of this incredible journey has been hidden from us for decades.